All right, welcome. My name's Adam Miller. I'm part of the Ansible engineering organization, and I have my colleague here with me today.
I'm Daphne Mendoza. I'm the technical marketing manager for network and edge automation.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about specifically addressing information security requirements with network security using Ansible, which is a whole mouthful of information. The goal of this talk is mostly, actually we have an outline here, just kind of better understand the security. I'm going to trip over things and fall on, it's going to be terrible. We're going to talk about the security operations landscape. What on earth I mean when I say the word security, because it means very different things, different people, contextually, it's different. Security automation. What is security automation with Ansible? Why does it exist? What do we do with it? Detailed overview with some code examples. We're going to actually get into a little bit of nitty gritty. I don't have a live demo for you today unless Daphne threw one in. No live demos? All right, no, none of those today. We'll talk about some various other things. Network is security layer, and then business context and event-driven. So this is going to drive us back into the fun topic of event-driven automation that has hopefully been new information to you yesterday. All right, so really quick, security operations landscape. What is this? Well, it's a set of technologies that are typically addressed by the SOC, or the Security Operations Center. So these are going to be your information security professionals. These aren't necessarily going to be your typical systems administrators. These are going to be people who are responsible for detecting intrusions and dealing with incident response and threat hunting and those types of things. So there's a category of products and technologies that Ansible has the opportunity to automate. So we brought the Ansible automation to a new demographic of human, a new market segment, a new group of IT professionals. So, I don't remember this slide being here.
Yep, I added it.
Oh, that's why, because Daphne threw it in.
Yeah, I messed up with all the security
No,
slides.
it's all good, it's all good. No, okay, so we have a few supporting quotes in here kind of talking about why we've done what we've done and talking about how these different things go in. So this is from a good partner of ours, WWT, and kind of just showing how it's an integral grease of the security process. So
and to go deeper, WWT use case, this is recent. If you find the videos, they actually automated. They went extreme on automation. So try to check the reference in the slide or Google them, because they're having all end-to-end automation. So it's security, they automated the firewalls, they automated also a network, they have ACI automation. They dramatically changed how they are managing the infrastructure for themselves and for their own customers. So that's a very interesting use case. Like security is a piece, like they consider automation as a critical piece for security, but also for the operations. So yeah, I wanted to go there.
So I put the slide in here because I wanted to illustrate the market. This is effectively a broad overview by an organization called Momentum Cyber. They put together a kind of overview of the product landscape of, if you are in this space, if you have to go make decisions about technologies that you work with, this is effectively your map. Anybody doing Kubernetes? A few. Anybody gone to landscape.cncf.io and watched your browser cry? It's an absurd amount of JavaScript and CSS. The point is, it's an eye chart like this. Each category of product in here, there's a ton of them. None of them talk to each other, or few of them talk to each other. The idea here is for Ansible to be the automation glue, to be, as our Italian colleague likes to call, the lingua franca of your automation. It is the common component, and because of the fact that Ansible is a agentless automation utility that has the capacity and the potential to automate absolutely anything that is communicable over any networking technology. We actually have the capacity to talk to things that don't even talk IP. We've been working on some industrial edge componentry that will do other network technologies. So we can very earnestly say that we have the capacity to do this. So what is Ansible security automation? Well, I'm not going to read this at you. Effectively, our goal is to be not only your IT glue for your systems operations or your DevOps practices or for doing, GitOps or whatever it is that your practice or the culture of your company is kind of evangelizing as the method by which you consume automation. What we're doing here is we're bringing that to the Security Operations Center and attempting to give that demographic the same capacity and the same capabilities that we've enjoyed for the last decade for IT operations. So where do we cover? Well, I showed you the picture before. Unfortunately, we have not covered the entire gamut of the product space just yet. We are currently in endpoint protection platforms, privileged access management. I can never remember the acronym for SEM. It's Security Information Enhancement Management, something of that dimension. Intrusion detection or prevention systems and enterprise firewalls. So these are kind of the spaces that we've covered so far, and I'll show a couple of examples in these different spaces with some kind of key products that we wanted to highlight here with some partnerships that we've been able to establish. Is it a security solution? Are we trying to be the next, pick one, Nessus? No, we're not. We are an automation tool. We are an automation platform. We deliver automation capability to our users. We are the glue. Ansible is universal language. I talked about this before. I'm going to talk about it again. It's important enough to have its own dedicated slide. The idea behind the simple, or hopefully simple, simple is an objective word. The idea behind the Ansible language is to be human readable. It is to allow for people to read it in order and understand what is happening. If you're descriptive in your task names, somebody who does not have domain expertise should be able to read through your playbook and understand what's going on. And that's the goal, is to bring that to another demographic of human, largely because in the security industry, nope, I don't have my slides. Okay, it's not in order. In the security industry, there have been a number of studies, specifically by like the Penniman Institute and others, that have shown through surveys with industry leaders that there is a skills gap. There is a higher demand for security professionals than they have a number of humans, and the goal is to allow the existing security professionals and those who are up and coming to utilize automation to make their jobs easier, to get rid of the monotonous tasks. And in some cases, we've found it to be almost a training tool, because you can have existing automation payloads or automation workloads or jobs in your automation platform that through role-based access control, you can give more junior developers or more junior operators the ability to do and run and take responsibility and ownership of those without giving them full keys to the entire castle. And that's the idea, is you don't want more junior people to run wild in the enterprise, but you do need an on-road for them. You need them to be able to train up, to become more skilled, and this is hopefully a goal for that. So, security teams, large organizations, like I talked about. Security process maturity model. So this is something that I genuinely can't recall if Masso made this up or not, but effectively you have opportunistic, systematic, and institutionalized. Opportunistic is effectively, I see something that is repetitive and monotonous, and I need to automate it. So I'm gonna make an automation for that. But it's not necessarily systemic. It's not necessarily built into your organization. It's not considered a core practice of what you do. That's where we move into systemic. Systematic. Systematic is a componentry of, okay, I've reached a point where I have universal logging across my entire environment. It's going to a central place. I can do log correlation on anything. That's pretty good. The next is institutionalized, and this is where we get into the security operation automation response platforms, or SOARs. And the SOAR platforms, these are where we find ourselves with not only the ability to do correlation, but the ability to do automatic remediation. And this is where Ansible ties in. So we actually do have some integrations with some SOAR platforms to where our automation capability is the thing that delivers that automatic automation and remediation componentry. Okay, yeah, so this is, I kind of talked about this. I probably should have advanced my slides a little bit as I narrated on, but the idea here is you have the ability to bring this automation to a new space. You have the ability to reduce your human errors. Every one of us has typoed something on accident and caused some outage, small or big, something happened. Hopefully it wasn't too catastrophic. And then enforcing consistency. So if you get to a point where this is a standardized practice and everybody is aware of this and everybody's familiar with the tooling, then we have the ability to have more peer review of content, to view and provide feedback, and then establish a community of practice around these types of things. So this kind of gets us to the next, so joint solutions with SEM offerings. So we do have integrations with a couple of SEM platforms, most notably IBM QRadar and Splunk security platform. I'm sorry, Splunk Enterprise Security, apologies. And this is where you get into your investigation enrichment, where you've identified something wrong, you can start doing that log correlation, or you could start going to hunt for threats when you find things that pop up in an audit or you know, something has triggered an alert in the SOC. And then incident response, where you know, you're under attack and you got to do something because either something is going down or data is on the egress out of your network that shouldn't be on the egress. So again, I'm just going to keep hammering these points home. It's about simplicity, consistency, modernization, and oh, I actually didn't talk about extensibility. So one of the big things with SEM platforms is they target specifically the security use case. They don't provide a lot of capacity to go beyond that, or a lot of capability to extend beyond what the core area of that product covers. And with Ansible, because of the fact that we integrate with literally thousands of different pieces of technology, this extends those platforms to be able to reach out and perform way more automation than they could before by themselves. So, like I mentioned before, we can do enrich and extension with SOAR platforms, IBM Resilient, and Splunk. Oh, Splunk got renamed to Splunk Phantom. Apologies. It's been a long 2 days, y'all. All right. So detailed overview, we're going to get into a couple examples. So this is our AAP-supported integrations as of now. In each category, they're all there. If anyone wants to pause, take a picture, go ahead. We also have, the slides will be available after Summit. Everybody can get to them. All right, so if we...
Adam, go back a little.
Sorry. Oh, questions, comments? Okay, hey, all right, no, we'll pause. Sorry. Yeah. More phones are coming out.
The integrations.
I'll pause for water.
Yeah.
Am I good?
Yeah. We're good.
Okay. So we'll go through a couple of examples. So in this use case, we have investigation enrichment. So we found a situation in which we need to increase or create a log source. Now, if anybody's ever dealt with centralized logging platforms, we kind of know that it's all licensed by rate or data processed or something to the effect of how much data is being brought into the platform, how much is being indexed, something of the sort. So typically we don't leave everything in full-on debug mode at all times. However, in the scenario in which you are under active threat, you probably need to bump up the logging on things that aren't typically in like debug mode or other. So if you need to do more in-depth analysis or better log correlation, things like that, you'll add these ad hoc. And typically we've found with customers that we've talked to is a ticket will go in, or they're in a war room and people are just like frantically doing this on their laptop. What we can do, especially now with event-driven, is we can actually kick these things off automatically. So this will actually create an IBM QRadar log source via the log source management module, and this will go out and enable that piece there. So the thing that I wanted to point out here is this should look very familiar for anyone who knows Ansible. This is a standard playbook. It's simply we brought this to a new area. And that's the goal, that's the thing I wanted to highlight, is because of the reality that bringing Ansible into this space does give you that consistency across your organization. Now, you can call it convergence, you can call it whatever you want. It's not necessarily about having people cross domains of expertise, but so much making sure that people are talking the same language. So now, incident response, and this kind of can build on the previous example if we needed to. We've realized something is happening, we need to make it stop happening. In this example, we have a checkpoint firewall. Actually, I think that might be their old logo.
Yeah.
That might still be relevant. I don't know. So here we need to do a blocked IP. We need to go ahead and do an ACL manager. We need to set our block IP, and then we can do attacker. And we have a more comprehensive example. It doesn't fit on the screen. It's just really big and long. But the idea here is that we've templated this attacker IP and this target IP, which is information we can extract from either the log correlation platform, the SEM, or the SOAR, and then we can inject that in here to where we'll do an auto remediation. And again, this kind of digs into that use case I was talking about, where you could even, once you get to a point of maturity and trust with your automation, you could have this kick off automatically based on some rule set, either in your SEM or SOAR platform or with event-driven Ansible.
Okay. Me. Yeah.
Daphne.
Okay. This one.
Yeah. You need that.
Okay. So this came like the network as a security layer. That's not something that came from my brain. It's something that I discussed with a CTO from a former CTO of a gas and oil company. He's now a CTO in a bank. And he told me, like, when we are talking about industry 4.0 use cases, and when we are talking about edge, have you seen the edge sessions, edge boot? Heard about edge computing, right? It's kind of a buzzword, because it's kind of an 80s concept. Like edge is something that's remote, that you own, that you have to manage. And in contrast with the cloud applications and cloud services, public clouds are managed by some trusted company, right? Like AWS or Google, and they provide you a tooling. In the case of edge, usually you have legacy infrastructure, and that's still critical infrastructure. It still has critical data, but you don't have skilled people, and you have your data center with all the physical security layers. And you usually don't have all the extended security into the remote sites. So we were having that conversation. He told me, at some point, when you are moving applications to the cloud, and when you are starting extending your applications and your critical data into remote sites, and when you are storing them everywhere, your footprint becomes too complex to manage. It's really critical to manage everything everywhere at the same time. So he told me the network is now a security layer. So it's not only that you are extending the CM SOAR controls, but also your network should have the segmentation and should be hardened and should be compliant. Because we have seen, if you remember 2017 year, was a very interesting year. I'm in Chile. Like 2-3 banks were attacked. And when they started auditing, they realized that they had a flat VLAN, for example. Like flat VLAN, they don't have the traffic segmented. So what happens with the networks when they are not considered as a security layer is that if you don't enforce the compliance, if you don't follow the best practices, it's a matter of having one ransomware, and it will spread everywhere. It's not contained. So now the network is also a security layer. So it's beyond the CM and SOAR and the firewalls. So the first thing to know about edge use cases, I'm going to go there, and I think that applies to everything, is that the connectivity is the first point of failure or success. So if you are managing properly a network, you have half of the way covered. I think, for me, I'm a network engineer. For me, it's the most precious resource. Your application depends on the network, your security depends on the network, and your business depends on the network, properly done and secured. So the network is the communication layer to the endpoints, and is the bottleneck for these edge use cases. And it's very expensive. So at some remote sites, you have only satellite connections, and they are very expensive, and you have high latency. So you have to manage the network in the safest and securest way. What's the value for non-security professionals? I'm not a security professional, I'm a network engineer. And for IT network operations, it's mostly that you are extending your use cases with a focus on security. And it also that automation helps the team cooperation and some sort of optimization of the processes. So in Red Hat, we say, like, start small, dream big, and we really think about it. Like you start with all these operational day use cases, you reduce the human error, and at some point you will have some event-driven use cases when you have mitigation, and we have faster reaction to the events. So this is the edge, just you see, just to provide the visibility on what's happening and what's happening in all your companies, what's happening in the industry. So we have now the IoT. We want to get here, right? This is our gold mine of data. This is the customer experience. This is the self-checkout. This is the modernization. This is IoT. In order to get here, we have all these layers. And some of them are managed by the service providers. Some of them are managed by you. Here is the SD1. Here's the one layer. And this is the data center. And you have also the cloud. So in order to get here, we have to be able to manage these securely. And this is what you have in the network in terms of technologies. So all of these, if you see networking is one component, but this is the glue to interconnect all of this stuff. So we have seen a lot of focus when we started meeting with customers for Edge. Like all the marketing and all the industry wants to get to IoT, you want to get to applications, you want to get here. But in order to get here securely and to scale, you have to be able to extend this SOAR, the IP address management system, the identity management, the certificates, all over the way to this layer. And that includes also the networking connectivity and securing the traffic you are moving back and forth, because you have all this data that's open. You have the data in transit. So the data in transit and the data in rest should be secure. That includes also firewall layers. So how the things connect into the remote sites, and this is a very simplified case. We have seen SD1 and we have seen traditional one combined all together. We have seen also for SD1 cloud-based controllers. I'm not putting a vendor because there are a lot of vendors that are doing this at scale. Behind you have the access layer. Sometimes you have the load balancers, Wi-Fi, and then you have your devices. And Ansible, we are putting Ansible to manage all of this for network. And we are also decoupling the execution layer. So we have the automation mesh, which is an overlay that's encrypted, so you don't have all the management traffic coming back and forth to the data center. So we are decoupling that as well. And in the central data center, you can have your controller that integrates with ServiceNow, with the ITSM, and with all the corporate levels, role-based access, LDAP, and so on. Some use cases we have, and it was interesting. I joined the Edge business unit or Ansible business unit with a focus on Edge, like 1.5 years. And the first thing I thought is like, oh, this is going to be 5G, this is going to be IoT. Like, all the customer meetings I went to were about this compliance. It was like, I have the auditors, I have the regulators, I have to have everything compliant. It was all compliance. Now, we tend to forget that the boring stuff is the critical stuff to start. So it was all compliance. It was all software updates. It was all configuration hardening and checks. So how do I check and how do I remediate? Sometimes not remediate, but mitigate, at least. I want to get notified. And that's when we have EDA. So we have the network devices. We have also the endpoints. And we have the firewalls. And we want to retrieve to what's happening and enforce the policies. And we want to have visibility, but also be able to have everything compliant. And that's when we are talking about Ansible as the glue. So when we are talking about Ansible as the glue is because it can solve multiple needs with multiple use cases and multiple domains at the same time through the certified collections and partnerships we have. If you have the firewall that's a Palo Alto Fortinet or Checkpoint, it can be automated. If you have virtual machines with vCenter, you can automate them. If you have RHEL, you can automate that. Same for networking. If either it is a Cisco iOS XE, iOS, or Arista, or HP Aruba, or Meraki, you can automate them. So that's why we're saying that Ansible is the glue. So this is just an example for firewalls, when you can have the policy optimization using Ansible. And for business continuity and event-driven operations, we have some use cases as well. So and you're probably already thought about event-driven Ansible and how you can put them into operations, right? It's a very powerful concept. It's a very powerful tool. So something that we are thinking about possible use cases. This is the killer app. Something you can do, service ticket augmentation. So as Adam mentioned, you don't want to have everything in debug mode. For sure, you will have a flood of events. It's not recommended. But if something happens, you want to be able to troubleshoot in real time. So you can have the service ticket augmentation for network infrastructure and also for the endpoints, for the devices. You want also to be able to check when something is, once you have everything standardized and you have a drift, you want to be able to detect that immediately and remediate or mitigate or notify, act upon the drift. You don't want someone plugging a rogue Linksys router into your remote site. And that happened to me. We didn't have the tooling. We didn't know this. But when we started auditing, we had like Linksys access points and Linksys routers everywhere. And it was an enterprise network. For the remediation, we want to address these drift issues. And also, when you have a slow performance, the application is not working properly, you have some issues, you want to be able to identify what's happening, why we are being attacked, might have a flood attack. So we want to be able to detect what's happening and outage issues as well. Something that happened to me for remote sites in the network is that you had the primary and secondary, and you have to constantly be able to check that the secondary is working well. Because sometimes when the primary fails, the secondary was down. So you don't have the high availability. So that's something that you want to be able to check as well. Primary and secondary should be working. Your HSRP protocol should be working. Like everything should be prepared in advance before you have the disaster. And same for user management, user authentication, that's simpler. If you have the login issues, be able to notify immediately after the 5 attempts, and for reset passwords, and also for moving the people to the role where they should be automatically. So we have also seen roles and role-based access. And for manufacturer or industrial use cases, you have different levels of control. It's not only by the role, but also by the location and the line of sight. So there are different levels of security controls that can be automated. For automated troubleshooting, these are very basic, push-based. If something happens, there are the smart buttons. So this is physical gear. You have the button. So you can push the button and do something upon it. Like for retailers, it's like I have a customer that's requesting for help, push the button, I get inside, but it also helps for alerts. Like if I have an attacker, if I'm robberies, like even for physical security, these smart buttons can notify, and you can automate upon. Notify, make a call, open a ticket, chat ops notifications. There is a myriad of use cases. Ticketing is big. Trigger automation depending on the ticketing system, and also be able to monitor depending on incidents. This is an example of remediating an issue for a managed system. You want to check, like, if I have a failure, IT is notified, the IT staff will start tracking. I will open a ticket automatically. If I have a contractor, will be assigned on the issue. The contractor can work the issue, and sometimes, usually the issues are very simple. We usually don't have catastrophic events. And when the system is restored, the IT contractor is paid for resolving, and I can close the ticket or notify. And the time to resolve can be shortened from days to hours. Something that we always have, and I'm very repetitive on that, is that there is a lot of waiting time in the middle of all the operations. So something happens, and until you visualize the issue, until you get notified, until you have the ticket, you might have hours of outage. So that's why event-driven Ansible is powerful for remediation. And these are the key building blocks. I added them in case you were not in the event-driven sessions. So they have 3 components. One is the sources of the event data. The rules that you will create. This is the rule books follow the same YAML structure. It's like creating a playbook. but you define the rules. These are your if-else conditions. And the actions is what you want to do. Usually where it's powerful is when it integrates with the controller. And the controller is the one that's running more complex actions. This is how a rule book looks. I'm showing this in case you didn't see them, and mostly because I want you to have the slides later so you have the reference and how they are working. So this is the anatomy of the rule book. So you receive the event, you can decide what's going to happen, and respond through your automation. This is where the traditional Ansible Automation Platform fits, or the controller. So that's what I wanted to show you. I think we are good in time for questions. Everything security, this is your guy. And we also have Brad. So he is our lead of the network automation engineering team. If you have seen or have been using the collections, like Brad's team is the team that's developing. So we are good for the questions.
Excellent. Questions, comments, snide remarks?
Tomatoes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Question about EDA and the events themselves. Is it a push or is it a pull? So is Ansible going out pulling from the sources of truth that you're getting these facts from? Or are those different sources, Splunk, what have you, are they pushing their events too?
So the question is, with event-driven Ansible, is Ansible reaching out and getting data, or is it receiving data? It's a push versus pull model. The way that's built now, it's receiving. It's a pull. So it will subscribe to a message bus of some sort. But you also, because you can build custom sources, you could actually build an event source that would reach out and do something. And similar to like how Prometheus does a reach out and a scrape of data, you could do that. Yeah. At the end of the day, the source plugins, they're just Python code that have to follow an interface. And if you implement the interface, you can kind of do whatever you want in the code block. So yes.
But it's mostly ingesting the event.
Yes, yeah. The out-of-the-box ones that you just do configuration and it just subscribes to a message bus and it's in an inbound or influx of traffic that it's just kind of reading and processing through a rules engine.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you all.
We're good. Thank you. And we will also be around in case you have something more specific that you want to cover. We are going to be with Brad and Adam outside, so we are here.